It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 470. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Hello.
Kodra.
Greetings, Wanderer.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hello, and rest in peace, Toriyama-sensei.
Seriously.
Yeah, I have weird feelings about that one, because I was never really a Dragon Ball fan, but also I am going to miss Akira Toriyama because quite possibly the most immediately recognizable art form or art style of anyone out there.
Well, and also Dragon Ball, sure, but also Dragon Quest, Chrono Trigger,
Dragon Quest and Chrono Trigger, awesome. I was never a big Dragon Ball fan, but like all the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, his art was it was background radiation of my teenage years.
Yep. Yeah.
I was never into Dragon Ball, but it was the thing that I could actually connect with most of my extended family on, given that we didn't really speak the same language and also weren't into the same things. But you know what is all over Central and South America?
I believe it.
Dragon Ball Z.
Dragon Ball's universal.
Goku is the universal language.
Yeah.
It just that's the only thing about when I say I have odd feelings about it is because all of the tributes have been almost exclusively Dragon Ball related, and all the other stuff I liked much better.
I've seen a fair bit with slimes in them, but yeah, Dragon Ball is what people think of first.
Yep.
So this did get me thinking again about Dragon Quest, and it occurred to me that my son has been showing interest in Minecraft, and you know what game I already own? Dragon Quest
Builders, I hope.
It's really good.
So he's playing it now, and he's real into it.
Nice.
I think I like the first one better than the second one, but it's real good either way.
Yeah. He is running around without any clothes now because his starting clothing wore off, and he hasn't advanced the story far enough for skeletons to start spawning. But hey.
Eventually.
At some point, as a parent, you just have to deal with your child running around with no clothes on. It's just a thing.
It's true.
So before the show, we were talking about a lot of Last Epoch topics, and I, made everybody pause because we've done that too often, where we, talk through a topic before we actually get to the show. I dinged level 100 this week.
Nice.
So it's my first 100 character in Last Epoch. It wasn't anywhere near as bad as a grind to 100 in Path of Exile was.
See, I feel like I'd be a lot closer to that, but I have a level 91 character, a level 71 character, and a level 62 character now.
I would be a lot closer, except that other game exists.
It's reasonable. Mostly, this is kind of shocking to me because I usually don't ult like this.
The risk, the opportunity cost of alting isn't very high in this game. And also we're generating so much loot for everything that it kind of prompts you to want to play the things. I have started a necromancer, but I'm not actively leveling it. However, I have a tab that is slowly filling up with an entire set worth of gear for when I finally do level it.
Well, but that's the thing is I am getting items to drop, and those items are interesting to the point where they make me ask, what could I do with this item? This is an interesting item that seems to have a build in mind for it. What is that build and what is it doing? And
This is one of my favorite things about this game is that uniques are interesting and actually significant enough for your build to care. I was extremely not expecting to find a weapon that caused me to completely change my build at like level 84.
Yeah.
But it absolutely happened, and it's super cool.
Yes, the uniques in this game. Well, and that's the thing is a lot of uniques in like Path of Exile are interesting, but like they come with a big upside and a big downside, and ask you if you can figure out how to work around that big downside. A lot of uniques in this game are like, hey, what if we took these things that you might not have looked at and make them really good? So you should look at those things.
Yeah. It's this question of like, how do you make a thing good enough? It's like, it makes me think of like patch when you have to like alter balance in a patch. It's like, how do you make something interesting enough to make you pay attention to it? And it's like, that's what the uniques do in this game is like, hey, did you think about using this thing? Maybe you should. You may not like it, but you should try it.
Well, and kind of my favorite thing about a lot of the very specific ability-based uniques is the items are good enough and provide usually 4 good stat hits that are independent of the spec-specific thing that it's doing. So, like, just because it is for a specific ability doesn't mean you're only ever going to want to use it on that ability. Like, I'm looking at you, Sunwreath, which is just an amazing fire damage ring no matter what you're doing with it.
Yeah, and like I'm using it because of the stuff it gives me, but it's also just good. I don't have to give up. That's the other piece of it is I don't have to give up raw effectiveness to do the cool thing.
So what I've been dealing with right now is a weapon called Turani's Bident. And Turani's Bident has a bunch of text on it that really wants you to throw it using javelin, and it turns your javelins into lightning damage, converts all damage to lightning, converts all ignite and bleed on it to electrify. And when you hit with a javelin, you get a 4-second flat spell damage buff. And at the start, I was like, okay, I was like, I'm going to throw the javelin, and there's a thing in javelin. There's a idle prefix that gives you a chance to cast smite on hit with a throwing attack. So that was my first thought. Was I'm going to do that. I'm going to just throw this javelin a whole bunch. But then that got me to look at Smite, which you can also turn into lightning and also cause to electrify. And if you cast Smite directly, you can also cause that to cast Healing Hands. And Healing Hands can both electrify your opponent and spreads electrify to nearby enemies. And I was like, actually, I think I just want to be smiting to propagate the electrify. And javelin, I'm going to be throwing and like using it as a big buff for myself. And there's a number of subtle ways that you can build this.
Have you noticed that you can turn your healing hands into a movement ability?
Yes, I have been thinking about that. But I also I can also turn lunge into something that throws a javelin, which is also interesting to me. So there's a couple of things I'm going to test there. I like how simple it is. I feel like one of the things that when I was starting to do Path of Exile, I think one of the very first things I asked is, what is the bread of Path of Exile? Bread being like, this is the guide to how to draft a magic deck in a draft environment. And I feel like in Last Epoch, I can if you are looking to do a build that stacks up a bunch of dots, you probably want attack speed, you probably want dot chance, but you don't necessarily care about flat attack or like higher hits. You're just trying to get as many hits as possible to stack the number of dots on an enemy really high. And that's a pretty simple principle, I think, to like building. Whereas like if you're crit focused, you're trying to like just get big numbers.
It's intuitive.
It's intuitive.
Like the things you want to do makes sense.
Well, and the tags on abilities are way more straightforward as to what is actually going to scale this thing. And it's not that PoE doesn't have tags, but there's a lot of edge cases where they work differently than you'd think the tags do.
Anyways, I despecialized one of the core skills that I've had specialized on my main because I was like, this isn't actually doing it for me, and there's something I could do better.
I despecialized a skill that I absolutely love because it was like, oh, that's also interesting.
I feel like I am on the other side of the information curve with this game.
Getting it early makes a big difference.
Yeah, that might be it. I did appreciate Rax's guide to like optimal paths through the campaign.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of the, quote unquote tips videos because inevitably, even though I've played a lot of this game, there's something that someone calls out that I've not even been aware was a thing. So like one of the things that I learned this week that is really cool is on the loot filter, you can flip from like full item names to shortened item names, and it only shows you the base type of the item instead of like all the, of the whatever type stuff. And what I really like about that is it has helped me get used to like knowing what the bases are, which is a state that I was in for a while in Path of Exile. Like I know what are bases that I'm going to care about because I've seen them so much. But in this game, I'm starting to develop that same, like I care about an obsidian axe because an obsidian axe is a minion axe. And it has like high physical on it. Like, so when I see an obsidian axe that drops, like I actually care about it potentially because I'm looking for, minion items now or whatever. Praetorian belt, I think. It's like a really good high survivability belt.
I think that it's cool that there are. I saw a new base in like the mid 80s.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they go like almost all the way up.
Yeah, almost all the way up. It's not like, again, continuing to use Path of Exile as an example, like Path of Exile, your progression, other than optimizing the stuff you already have, your progression stops at like the end of the campaign. You are going to find better versions of what you already have, but that's it.
Yeah, their version of that is there's a lot of rolls that you can't get on items unless they're of a specific item level, but the bases show up in the 70s.
But even those rolls stop at like 85, right?
Something around there, yeah.
They do, but like a lot of the relevant rolls aren't even that high.
Yeah.
And bases, I do believe, stop at 60 something. There are a few Atlas specific bases that only show up in maps that I think are 70-ish.
I also feel like bases barely matter in Path of Exile.
I mean,
if you're crafting your own
depends on
stuff,
your build heavily, because like if you care about armor, then you need an armor base.
I guess that's fair.
Like you're right. Like bases don't matter nearly as much as they do in Last Epoch.
Yeah. But also Last Epoch gives you a lot more of them, and they're a lot more specific. Like, I just found one that's ward gained on mana spent, along with other pro-ward defensive stats, and I am into it. I just need to find one that's good.
It does make it very interesting because theoretically, you would say the best item you could possibly get in a slot is an LP4 unique. There's surely some unique that you could put 4 affixes on and it would be great. Except, what if just the base item is better than all of the uniques you have optioned?
Yeah.
At which point, no, you probably want an Exalt with a sealed affix.
Yeah, on my little fire, spinny, not quite righteous fire character that I made for the second time because I decided Paladin was the correct choice. Solarium Plate is always the correct answer because it just has a lot of flat fire damage as part of the implicits. And it's like an amount of fire damage that is even hard to get as an affix if you get a well-rolled implicit.
Yeah. They matter, but they aren't the be-all, end-all, and it makes the whole it's sort of like, it's true of a lot of things where it's like, it matters, but it isn't the be all end all. And because that's true of so many things, you have so many build options because you can get to what you need to in a variety of ways. And also because their gearing system and resistances and so on are not just absolutely madness, you can see if this item is better, and you don't have to like completely restructure your entire build to see if it's better in some way.
That's one of the things I was talking about this week. That I really appreciate is how easy it is to have incremental upgrades in this game. Because like, okay, especially if it's a unique, well then I'm gonna go make an LP1 version and turn it into a legendary, and then I'll find an LP2 or LP3 and I'll make a slightly better version of it, or I'll start out with roughly the right stats, but then if I can find those stats on the correct base, then if I find an even better version of that base, I can, swap stuff up, and it feels like I am incrementally improving a character over time rather than, okay, I have all these plates spinning now. I don't want to change anything for fear of upsetting everything.
Yeah. I don't like feeling locked into my build or what I'm doing because it limits my fun. It means that like there are fewer items that drop that I care about. Like even with a completed build where I have very specific items I'm looking for, there are still plenty of drops that I get where I'm like, ooh, let me grab that because it's useful to me in some way, which makes drops interesting.
I mean, I am very much a Path of Exile enjoyer, and I will probably continue to be a Path of Exile enjoyer. But every time I have ever needed to swap an item on one of my builds to improve it, I end up, before all is said and done, I have probably swapped every single slot just to use this one item.
And spend some currency fixing some of those items to
because you're always going to harvest craft or resist to flip it to something else, or there's a bunch of steps, and it's like the number of times I have started up a tab that is just, okay, I'm piecing together what I'm going to swap to, and then it's this whole ordeal where you spend an afternoon swapping out stuff until you're stable again and can finally function.
Mm-hmm.
That is less of a thing in this game.
Here's an item that might one day be good. And sometimes it never is.
Well, and that's honestly, like, to be fair, that's the problem that you ran into in modern World of Warcraft. When they started adding in borrowed power into a lot of the items, you would get something that numerically looks like an upgrade, but because it didn't have the right unobtainium on it, you couldn't swap to it. And that's the problem that you have with Path of Exile, is this looks close, but it's not quite there. And like, I've had far less of this in this build, and I've swapped out gear pretty frequently on a lot of these characters, and it doesn't make that much difference.
So I've had the worst luck getting a weapon. Like, I know there are two weapons, either of which I would be happy with, that I need legendary potential on, so I can go like, engage with that system. And I can't get either one to drop, but I've been collecting stuff to go in there. And
so that when you finally get one,
yeah, when I finally get one, we're gonna try figuring out items. I don't know if it's going to be a staff or a two-handed sword, but
yeah, this is a thing that I think I was talking about the other day, that we probably need to do more of, is like find a time to drag everybody that needs things off of a specific boss.
Oh yeah.
And because you're just multiplying the number of chances, so like Tam needs a thing off this boss. If we have 4 people come in to kill the boss, we get 4 unique drop pools, and and if it drops, then we don't have to have the magical essence traded across because we're in the same party together. Because like I know there's a bunch of stuff I need off of a specific boss, couple of bosses, and if I had more people, I'm just increasing the randomization chance by every person that's in there. I've still not seen one of the purple essences at all. Has anybody seen one of those drop?
The purple. Oh no, I have not.
Yeah, like the one that lets you trade, I think, legendaries and LPs.
Yeah, I've not seen those.
I think they're unobtainium.
They might be a little unobtainium.
Squirrels are fun, though.
Yeah, and squirrels, I hadn't really thought about squirrels until you were talking about, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have 10 companions, and all I care about is how many times my companions apply bleed, so yes, I probably do want squirrels.
So, how many of you have tried Dwarven Realms after me sending everyone a copy of it?
I have.
Me.
Very, very briefly.
It is the dumbest game, and it should not be fun, but it's really stupid fun.
Well, it does seem like the most you game I've ever played.
It's hilarious. I mean, my favorite thing is to kite multiple hundreds of mobs around and then kill them all at once.
Yeah, no. I got the thing that lets you, like, proc a spinning axe around you. And apparently it doesn't have an animation limit, so like if you proc it multiple times, they stack multiple axes spinning around you, and at some point it just started looking like a big gray circle around me with how fast they were moving.
Yeah, the ones I was running is basically like meteor rain that just rains down fireballs from above, and also one that spawns like a bajillion totems when you hit something, and each totem explodes. So like I would bring this pack around and then proc that, which would proc totems, which would proc more totems, which would proc more meteors dropping from the sky, and just decimate the entire pack. And I'm seeing loot spinning constantly. Yeah, like for whatever reason, this was the week that apparently every ARPG streamer played this game, and it's like less than $5 currently. It's hilarious. It's delightful.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I haven't had a ton of time with it, but it definitely scratches some itch for just destroying mobs and mobs of enemies.
Yeah, it's like this blend of Vampire Survivors and Dynasty Warriors and like WoW-like perspective on the controls.
Yeah.
I would definitely check it out if you are at all vaguely interested. Especially now that it's like, I think it's $3 something per copy. It is like, I think it's like two twin brothers that started doing this as like a passion project and just started pulling together this game, and it's really simple. Yeah, but it's big fun.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out for a few bucks, definitely.
Roguelike lightning round.
So there's been a bit of a surge in action roguelikes recently. This really kind of started last year. Last Astral Ascent, a game that, for full disclosure, I did kickstart, came out in, I want to say, November or December. And it is a 2D, like, side-scrolling action beat-em-up roguelike. You either have, like, combat rooms or exploration rooms, or sometimes you have, like, a shop or something similar. A structure extremely familiar to anyone who's played Slay the Spire or any rogue or anything inspired by it. And that one's thing is that it put a lot of effort into making the combat feel good. So it's really fun to just fight things. And
I feel like that is vitally important in a roguelike.
Absolutely. The progression is not, I don't know, I'm not very far into it because I haven't played as much of it as I would have liked to. But it sort of started me on this trend of, hey, there are a lot of these games now. Which of them are good? Which of them are, worth playing?
So is this an action roguelike?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Guys, as we have now seen, recently we were looking, I think, at the definition of what makes a roguelike a roguelike.
The definition they came up with in 2008?
Correct.
I'm glad Toadchild brought up what exactly caused this. The answer is Splunky. A bunch of people were mad about Splunky.
That makes sense.
People were mad about Splunky. Makes sense.
So that's one. The other one, which was recommended to me by a friend, is called Spiritfall.
I've heard of this one.
Spiritfall is a very Smash Brothers inspired. Extremely so.
Huh, all right.
It's basically what happens if, like, I hate game journalist saying X meets Y, but I have no other better way to describe this game as Smash Brothers meets Hades.
I mean, I want to be totally honest, as an actual game designer, there are many pitches of very good games that start with X meets Y.
This game is about as far into that as you can, like including some Smash Brothers like mini boss fights that you can get into.
Nice.
Where you actually have to knock people off the platform in order to get boons.
Interesting.
And like directional sort of attacks and smash attacks, things like that.
That's cool.
So are you building like a Smash Brothers fighter then?
Sort of, yeah. You have a weapon when you leave, and you get various things that affect the moves. Like this one now causes frost, and say this particular spirit has an upgrade that makes it if you wall slam an enemy with frost, you do bonus damage. Things that build on each other a lot like boons and Hades do. Like that structure is extremely inspired by Hades.
I was thinking, like, does your character have different special attacks that like you select a la Hades?
Not really.
Okay. Or are those determined by the weapon?
They're mostly your basic attacks are determined by the weapon. You have a bolt, which is sort of like a Hades spell, in that the basic one is kind of trash, and the upgrades to it do wildly different things.
Got it.
So that's one. I'm also not very far into that one. There are so many of these. However, in the not action department, a very interesting roguelike came out recently involving cards. Not like Slay the Spire cards, like playing cards.
Yes.
Balatro came out of it. Had two very feature-filled demos, so there has been a lot of talk about it already. It just went into 1.0, I do believe, this past week, maybe a week ago, something like that. And it is a roguelike entirely about poker hands.
Poker roguelike is easily the weirdest thing I've heard in a long time, and it's apparently quite good.
Yes, if you are into the structure of roguelites in general, the run-based nature of how things go, this is an extremely good one.
I mean, to be fair, if you've been anywhere around game social media for like the last 2 weeks, you've definitely seen screenshots of this.
That is also likely, yes. Apparently, it got removed from Nintendo's eShop in Europe because gambling.
Yeah, they thought it was gambling. Yes.
I thought it was gambling.
Guys, no.
But yes, you start out with, by default, you start out with a normal 52-card playing card deck.
Of course.
And you're asked to make some poker hands. You do get to work with more than 5 cards at a time. I think the default hand size is 8. You can discard a few times trying to get what you want. And based on what you put together, you will earn some chips based on the cards and the hand, and a multiplier also based on the hand. But then you can level up each hand, and then you can also manipulate the cards in your deck by either like removing them or copying them to do things like play, 5-9 of diamonds. That's not a real poker hand, but Balatro calls it a flush 5 because it is a 5 of a kind that happens to also be a flush because you played 5 identical cards.
Where does 5 of a kind rate in the hands of poker power?
Above a royal flush.
Aha! Where does for like a flush 4 of a kind?
That's not really a thing because you need 5 cards for a flush.
Ah, right.
I think there is a Joker card that will allow flushes to be 4, but I have no idea if this works well with 4 of a kind or not. But just the sheer amount of variation you can have in just trying to make poker hands is astounding to me. Like, I'm not sure who came up with it. I mean, it's a solo dev, so he came up with the idea. But it's just incredible execution of this simple idea.
And man, can you get far on that? It's such a cool, like, just totally bonkers concept.
Well, and honestly, it kind of solved the, art generation problem, as card artwork's pretty simple to generate.
Yeah. There is an amount of art in this game for the Joker cards. There are 100 and some of them.
Do they all have different
Many
effects?
of which have different styles. They all look vaguely different. Like, a surprising amount of work went into the art for those.
Aren't there a bunch of tarot cards, too?
There are also a bunch of tarot cards. But those all have the same style, as well as planet cards, which are the things that level up hands. There are some invented planet cards because there are more than 9 actual hands.
Yeah, I love everything. I haven't played it, but just seeing it and reading about it brings me joy. It's hilarious.
Clearly, I want to see an imitator do this with Mahjong.
Ha!
which already has a ridiculous number of hands.
Okay, Tam, the remaking a classic topic.
So I'm now like 40, 30, 40, 50 hours. I don't even know anymore into Rebirth. And like, I think that we talked about this sort of when they first announced this project. And I'm pretty sure my comment at the time was like, that is a cursed dev project. Because you just can't, it's impossible. You're trying to make a game that, you're trying to remake one of the most beloved and misremembered games ever. You know, this is a game that people played when they were little, in some cases, little kids, or just heard about, or maybe never even played, but played the supplemental stuff and got really into that. Like,
or just old,
or just
it's been like decades since we played it.
Yeah, or it's just been forever, and so you remember like bits and pieces of it, and it was basically like, this is a total failure if they don't go just completely nuts with it, because you just can't remake the thing. It's not like, oh, you can't play it. Like, yeah, it's dated, but it's not like you can't get a hold of it. And so like they would have had to do just something radical with it, and they did. The example that I've given a few times is that it's like you're watching Romeo and Juliet, and it like deviates from the source material slightly as you're watching, that like have some weird implications, and you're like, that's interesting. I wonder if this is going to play out differently. And then Mercutio kills Tybalt in their duel. And like, first of all, what? And second of all, hey, this changes everything you thought you knew from here on out. What is going on? And they've managed to keep that through, like I said, however many tens of hours I've got in Rebirth, I've lost count. They've managed to keep that going through the end of the first game and into the second. And it's the most ambitious game series I think I've seen in like 20 years. Like, I think the last time there was a game series this ambitious was Mass Effect. And it's crazy to think that it's built off of this, known quantity. And it's not, at no point is it ducking the known quantity, but it's playing with it in interesting ways. A huge part of Rebirth is that part of the game that you don't remember because nothing interesting happened. Like,
yeah,
there's basically, playing off of the original, you leave Midgar, and then, I don't know, some stuff happens. Maybe Costa del Sol is in there. You get to the Gold Saucer and stuff happens there. Something, Temple of the Ancients. And like, I can tell you what happens, but it's not that interesting for the most part. Like, there's just, it's mostly you running across the world map and being like, oh man, this world map is so big. Like, it's the section of the game where they talk, where they're showing off how big their world map is by making you painstakingly walk across it. And like, the most story impactful thing is probably Cosmo Canyon. And frankly, I couldn't tell you what actually happens in Cosmo Canyon other than, that really cool scene with
Red 13.
With Red 13 and the planetarium.
I gotta be honest, like, Midgar and the Gold Saucer are the parts of Final Fantasy VII that I remember the most.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not unreasonable, because there's other stuff that happens and it's relevant, but it's either not tied to a location very much, or it's like parceled out in ways that are kind of forgettable. Like, it's a really cool story, but like, Final Fantasy VII is more vibes than coherent storytelling.
Yeah.
And the vibes are impeccable, don't get me wrong. But like, the original FF7 was definitely more vibes than, masterclass and narrative. And they've gone to great lengths to add just a ton of thoughtfulness to the storytelling. And it's, the other piece of it is like, they figured out what kind of game they want Final Fantasy they want like modern Final Fantasies to be, and like Final Fantasy VII in particular, and it's Yakuza.
Well, that kind of feels very true to the original game as well, because it's like there was so much side stuff happening in there.
There's a huge amount of side stuff, and it's not afraid to be absolutely deadly Shakespeare. I mean, Shakespeare is a bad example, but like absolutely deadly serious and saying very, very pointed things and unrepentantly silly. And it's really cool to me to see that, because like Final Fantasy VII has some silly nonsense in it, and they preserve it by leaning into the Yakuza vibe, which I think is incredibly cool. There's sometimes their joke is just with the soundtrack. I found out that it's recurring. They have a song for when you're following a dog around. There's a particular song that plays whenever you're following a dog around. And you'd think that wouldn't come up much, but it does more than you'd think.
Yes.
And it's hilarious. Like, it's an adorable song. It makes me, it's actually fun. They've managed to meet and improve upon possibly the finest video game soundtrack ever written. Sorry, every other video game. Not sorry. It's incredible. And they're not afraid to change things sometimes in big ways. The thing that had gotten me before was I was like, okay, they're not afraid to change things, but they're only changing stuff that like lets them tell more story, which is cool. I'm totally cool with them changing the way the story unfolds. But they're also changing stuff throughout the story to make it a more coherent story, or because, hey, it turns out that this thing that the original game was building to be a big reveal is not, because that game is old. Everyone knows X event occurs, so they're just messing with you. We're just going to remix it, and that's fine. And they actually take the time to explain like some of their more nonsense characters, except for one incredibly side character that gave me weird, creepy vibes in the original and sure still does now. Like, not a spoiler. Anybody remember Esther? The like strangely put together and well-dressed chocobo lady from the prison, where you're like, what are you even doing here?
I don't remember this.
I did not remember her.
She's an unbelievably minor side character. And like, other than being incongruous in the original, I was like, she's totally forgettable. And she's still here, and she's just as incongruous. And it turns out that higher resolution just leaves me with more questions. There's a similar thing going on where they have built out like Final Fantasy VII was a game about setting, not a game, or a game about vibes, not about setting. The world building is not what I would call great. Like, it had iconic places, but it didn't make any sense. Like, oh, war between Midgar and Wutai. Wutai is like four huts on a beach. Like, I sure don't believe that. But they've built an entire history that works. And it makes me wish that, like, I want Disney to learn from this. Like, a classic story retold in a way that is both interesting to people who have never seen it before and like toying with the expectations of people who are like very familiar with it is such a cool place to it's just such a cool thing to explore. And it gets you both, hey, we're not just a slave to the old story. Like, we can be creative, but also we can hit all the nostalgia notes. Like, the fact that the FF7 remake series is weaponizing my own nostalgia against me is like, I haven't quite decided if I'm frustrated or amazed by it. It's a little bit of both. It's definitely playing with my expectations, but I think that's a really cool thing to do, because it knows exactly where the line is. Like, it isn't playing with my nostalgia to laugh. it is playing with my nostalgia because it has something to say about it. You know, whether that's, hey, you remember the 90s where we made a bunch of like really kind of gross jokes? We're going to not do that anymore. And we're going to make it absolutely clear by having, you know, the new fashion guy character who leads your you know, musical number in the original come back. He's a recurring character, and you know, and he's great. It's the same like visual beats you remember, the same vibes, but but delivered differently and like with a much better story wrapper around it. And man, it is hard to get something that is this close to the original while also not being the original and being probably better. Like I didn't really expect to have my favorite Final Fantasy game supplanted by a new Final Fantasy. I don't know if it's a new Final Fantasy. That's a maybe a questionable one. But I want to see the Final Fantasy.
I feel like
6.
it's a new Final Fantasy because it's very different than Final Fantasy VII.
It is like very different from Final Fantasy VII. I think that they've done a better job of characterizing a bunch of different characters, and that's also really cool.
I think the characters are absolutely wonderful. I love the interactions with the crew.
Oh yeah, they're so good.
Yeah. They're perfect. They're just what I always would have wanted.
Yeah.
Whatever horrendous sorcery they did to make sure that your whole party is always present, no matter what you're doing, because they're there even in the backgrounds of your fights, contributing in small ways, which is nuts to me. And they follow you around in the whole 9 yards. That's nonsense. I can't believe they did that. I've got like 9 people following me around at any given moment now. Like I have all but one of the original cast. I don't have Vincent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Vincent is the last character that you can get.
Yes.
Well, I mean, as I recall, Vincent was an extremely missable character in the original game, and you picked him up very late.
Yeah.
And mostly he didn't really interact with the story at all.
Yeah.
He was just this weird dude you found in a box in the basement.
Hey, he got his own story later.
Yeah, like Yuffie wasn't that different, to be honest. Like Yuffie, super missable.
Yeah, because you didn't have to go like wander around in the forest until you fought Ramuh. Was that?
I think you fought her in the forest. Like you could find her in the forest.
Yeah, you fought her in the forest, and there's like some deeply nonsensical like series of dialogue options you've got to pick in order to recruit her. And if you don't, like she vanishes forever or something. She's super missable, but she's like, the fact that they introduced her in DLC is actually relevant because she is a very different character.
Mm-hmm.
Like the trappings are all the same, but her and some of her motivations are the same, but because like she's part of the story now, she actually exists as a foil for Barrett, and that's really cool. And you actually get to see it because she's following me around all the time. So you can just have, like in the original, you frequently only had the character interactions of scripted things or the people who you chose to be in your party at any given moment. And so now with the entire entourage hanging on with you, there's just like banter between any two characters, which means that like I actually kind of like Cait Sith.
He is quite fun.
Like, yeah, because he's fun, and you get a sense of his like his weird banter. You get a sense of his character because he's like constantly chattering. And like he's another one of those characters where the game is like, yeah, you know his story. We're not gonna mess around with it. We're not gonna pretend you don't know who he is or what his deal is. So they just don't waste time with it. You know, they cut to the guy controlling him, and from then on, you get this like back and forth with the party where they're like convinced he's a Shinra spy, and he's like, "No, look, I'm not spy. Like, yes, I work for Shinra, but no, I'm not spying on you. And Barrett's like, yeah, that sounds like a bunch of bullshit, frankly. And he's like, well, I'm not though. It is so cool to see, and I want to see this treatment. I want to see this treatment for games that I like less.
I would love to see something like this for Final Fantasy VI.
Yes, I think I would like Final Fantasy VI if it got this treatment.
I mean, I already love Final Fantasy VI, but like, there's enough nonsense that happens in that game that it would be really interesting to actually like expand a little bit on some of it.
Yeah, like I think that the coolest thing that I've seen that's net new is the fact that they explicitly create a world history and like build out the world building into actually this is a really cool setting now, instead of just like a pastiche of stuff of set pieces. Like, oh hey, no, there used to be a republic. The republic fell because imperialism. Like, Shinra causes a lot of damage in a bunch of different places. But there's all of this infrastructure that remains. It's like, oh, all of these ruins are because nobody uses trains anymore. Oh yeah, this was Barrett did grow up in a mining town, and it was poor because they mined coal.
Not Mako.
Yeah, nobody, like Mako happened and nobody needed coal anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a bunch of broken down old cars that run on not Mako. And so you have like these various places that are like, yeah, we don't, it lends a kind of personality to all of the places that aren't under Shinra's thumb, because they're like, we're using alternative fuel sources. We don't have the same luxuries, but we also don't have like the same, issues. And everywhere you go, every major area is this kind of expertly paced open world segment. In the second one, in the first one, it's true too. Like, there's exactly enough side content for you to be like, okay, that was cool, and I feel like moving on. And I think every single open world area I've been to, I'm like, I don't feel like filling all of these little dots again. I'm just gonna move on with the story and maybe do the ones on the way because they give me useful stuff or whatever I need to for side quests, because the side quests are actually like really cool storytelling. And then by the time I'm done that, I'm like, well, I'm like 2/3 of the way through, and I know where a bunch of these are, and they take like 30 seconds a pop. Sure. And I full cleared every area I've been to just because it knows exactly how not to overstay its welcome. I don't think I've seen that in an open world game in years. Usually I'm like, all right, I'm tired of, even ones that I love, even like Horizon Zero Dawn, which I love. I'm like, nope, I'm done with chasing markers on the map. Just not interested. But anyway, the thing that just amazes me about it is just the sheer ambition of delivering on every beat. The game is stunningly huge, but it doesn't feel overwhelmingly big. It's just, there's a lot to do, and I want to see it all. It does have a Yakuza tier level of minigames. Like, it is bonkers the number of like random minigames I've run into. And like, if you're just like patently allergic to minigames, like, that game, that will probably annoy you, but I feel like they do a good job of breaking up the rest of the gameplay so that it's like, oh yeah, you could do something a little bit different for just a moment or two, just to like catch your breath and then keep on going, unless you're just like truly crazy and want to beat a drag queen at sit-ups.
Who doesn't?
Not me. I definitely beat that guy. It took forever. I spent more time on Millennia in Elden Ring than I did having Tifa do sit-ups, but not by as big a margin as I would like to claim.
Yeah, I am way behind on these games. Like, I just got to Aerith's house, so I'm looking forward to getting to Wall Market. But I'm definitely seeing a lot of what you've talked about, like the the entire time crossing the roofs to get away from the church to Aerith's house. Like, Aerith is just nonstop ragging on Cloud.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Oh, sassy
Wonderful.
Aerith is wonderful.
Yeah, like having Aerith be there's a great moment that you're gonna slightly spoil because it's just one line, but like there's a moment where Barrett's like, man, only a dumbass would believe that, and Aerith like instantly cuts in, raises her hand. Does that make me a dumbass? And he's like, I mean, I didn't mean it like that. That's really funny. She's like, she is sassy, and she brings out sassy Tifa, which is also very funny.
Oh, yes.
That's frightening.
Poor Cloud. Poor Cloud.
It's definitely Cloud bullying hours in Rebirth. Like,
But,
nonstop, 24/7 Cloud bullying hours.
but Cloud deserves it.
Oh, he does.
Like he's actually earned it because they make. I think the weirdest part is that Cloud is more of an asshole in this one, and it takes his arc to be less of an asshole takes way longer to move, and it means that a bunch of other characters get to shine. Because, like, honestly, he kind of is sort of a dick for a while, and it makes him starting to warm up to people actually feel really impactful.
Yeah, even now, like those occasional moments where he like actually responds with a little bit of humor to something, that Aerith said, for instance. Like,
Yeah,
they're so rare that they're meaningful.
yeah. He isn't like a tabula rasa character.
Mm-hmm.
He's just not like, oh, you see how this dude is a mercenary. Like, what else would he do? And he's got a little bit of that. Somebody made a comment. I was reading a comment online somewhere that was like, hey, so this dude was 16 and lost 5 years and is trying to keep up with all of his friends who are in their 20s.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's probably a mess.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out, yeah, he is. And he's trying desperately not to let anybody know how much of a mess he is. But also because they cut away to other characters a lot more, it's not like everybody else doesn't realize how much of a mess he is.
Yeah.
And like that's actually really cool to see because like, oh, it turns out Cloud is just a total disaster, and nothing he remembers is real is a thing that everybody knows. So the game is okay letting you know that everybody knows it.
Yeah. I also appreciated that I didn't have to drop a bunch of barrels in the proper order in the church. Thank you.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they give you like little puzzles or little mini games, they are the magic combination of not too onerous and reasonably short.
Yeah. Also, I don't again, it's been almost 30 years since I played the original game, so maybe I'm just not remembering it. But I do not recall the original game implying that Aerith and Reno and Rude have a history. And like, honestly, the vibe I got from the way Aerith's mom says Rude was here was like that nice young Rude that you were friends with when you were little stopped by.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if they enlarge upon that later in the game, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Okay, good.
Yeah, they don't drop threads. Like even threads that the original game drops, even threads that like they certainly could have dropped, like Johnny.
Yeah, no, it took me a moment to realize, oh yeah, I remember Johnny.
Right. Again, totally forgettable character.
Yes.
Unbelievably menial side character. Sticks around for some reason. They kept him. They didn't need to. But like, if you wondered what happened to that guy, you get to find out. I didn't, but I found out anyway.
I mean, they are kind of taking a probably 60-hour game and turning it into a 300-hour game.
Mm-hmm.
So they might as well just expound on all of the details that got overlooked.
I mean,
Yes.
Luckily there's a whole lot of them.
There's a lot of them. And oh boy, are they into the deep cuts. I met Cisne, and boy, if you don't know who that character is, I don't blame you.
I hope you played some of the side games.
I was gonna say the only reason I know is Crisis Core.
Yep.
Yes.
This game remembers Crisis Core. I don't know. Like, Crisis Core and the fact that this game clearly remembers it is one of the reasons why I'm not totally sure how this game is going to end. It's deeply weird knowing what's coming next, but also not having any idea. Like, I have a very good idea of the arc the game is taking because I've played this game before, but also I haven't played this game before and I am not sure where it's going. I have heard people talk about there's a twist at the end of the second game that's almost as big as the twist at the end of the first game. And what? That seems unreasonable. But anyway, I will stop endlessly gushing about this game. It's
pretty
incredible.
Magical. It's just, yeah.
I will need to find time with the TV.
Yep, that's half my problem.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
I have a child who is working his way through Pokemon.
Well,
which Pokemon? Yes.
I mean, I'm kind of hoping that it won't be a full year before it comes out on PC. Because I'd really rather play it on PC.
Did the other one come out on PC?
Yeah, it's on PC. It's on, I think it may be an EGS exclusive.
No, it's on Steam now.
Oh, it is now.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it was originally an Epic Games Store.
Square is stranded on EGS.
Yeah.
So I've got a topic, and I'm not even sure how to get into this one. And this is like bouncing back to Last Epoch.
Sure.
Last Epoch has had a bigger impact on the ARPG scene than I think I expected it to. And what I mean by that is like there's a bunch of things that have been happening, and I am not sure if they're directly related to Last Epoch's launch or not, but it seems like so. Okay, there's multiple layers here. One, Diablo 4 is not doing well. It has not been doing well. Season 3 was bad. The Gauntlet was delayed at the start of Season 3, and when it finally came out, everybody was like, "Wait, this is what we were waiting on." So it's not really doing well. So how this plays into it is there's a bunch of streamers who have been traditionally corporate Blizzard people and only really played Diablo games. And one by one, over the course of Diablo floundering, there was a whole group that broke away from the pack and tried some Path of Exile. And now there seems like there's a much larger community that decided, oh, hey, Last Epoch's actually really good. Maybe it's better than I thought it was going to be. And also is more enjoyable from Diablo 4. And also, maybe I'm changing my religion. And I'm not going to be Diablo exclusive anymore. I'm going to play all the ARPGs.
So I feel like Diablo 4 was disappointing. And some people went to Path of Exile, and some people got put off by Path of Exile. Like, I am a recent convert to Path of Exile. I finally, quote unquote, got it and was able to play through Path of Exile. And now I'm like, I don't know that I want to, like, am I going to take time out of Last Epoch to League Start Necropolis? I don't know.
I think there's a lot of people that were unhappy with Diablo 4 and also looked at Path of Exile as being an unreasonable option.
I don't blame them in one bit.
And now they've seen Last Epoch came along and have gotten a taste of what folks that weren't only playing Diablo games have gotten to experience.
Well, but
but it's not even. It's not. I don't know that it's even that. Like I sure don't have like what if I weren't playing Last Epoch and I didn't like Path of Exile and like I skirt the edge of Path of Exile. I don't actually love that game. It's just the only option in town.
Well, and for the longest time, I don't play ARPGs because you tell me ARPG means either I'm playing Diablo or I'm playing Path of Exile, and I say, how about I play neither of those?
Yeah, or I'm playing one of a number of like high concept, kind of iffy execution themed games. Like there's a couple of them that I've like tried and they've been okay.
Oh yeah, like I'm playing Magicka. Oof.
Well, or like, I'm thinking of stuff like Victor Vran or that one whose name I can't remember that Bell got really into and I played a little bit of.
I would say Grim Dawn is not in this category, but things like
Wolfson
maybe is.
Wolfson, that's the one.
Yeah.
Victor Vran
had a lot of problems and still continues to have problems.
And that's the thing is that like you were playing them. It was one of those things where it's like a lot of these you play them because you wanted to play because you were really into the genre.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not because they were necessarily good games. It was just like, I mean, it's like me in real-time strategy games. Like you take what you can get at this point. There's not like there's that many of them.
Yeah, or like if somebody's into 4X games, they're going to probably play every 4X that comes out, at least a little bit. Because there's not that many that come out.
If you play 4X games and you are done with Stellaris, good luck. Like, there's nothing else doing.
Well, to be fair, like, 4X games have the same problem that we're talking about for this genre.
Yeah.
Where you either play Civilization or you play Stellaris. And if Stellaris is too confusing to you...
I will not stand here and listen to this Age of Wonders slander.
Yeah, well, you've got basically three choices. You've got Civ, you've got Age of Wonders, and you've got Stellaris.
Yeah.
And you might have Total War. And if you like Total War, despite it being very different from the rest of those,
I really liked Dawn of War, but it didn't stick around for very long, and nobody seemed to be doing the thing that Dawn of War was doing, where it was like blending a 4X and an RTS at the same time.
Oh, that's Total War is doing that. It's just historical rather than fantasy.
Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, like so there's been this grand migration of people to Last Epoch, and it's roped in a lot of people that stayed away from Path of Exile because that first time you look at the sphere grid is nonsensical.
Yeah.
So like, but more than that, this week is the beginning of Path of Exile's spoiler week. And there'll be another week next week. And everything that we've seen so far has been quality of life changes.
Cough, cough.
And well, some of them are some drastic changes, but also like, I don't think, like, maybe I am off base, but I don't think Grinding Gear Games would have taken the time to make any of these changes had they not just been shown up by a game that is known for quality of life changes.
Define quality.
I wouldn't call them shown up. And also, Last Epoch is a little rough around the edges.
It is, but they also potentially had more numbers than Path of Exile's seen.
That's true.
It's true. I mean, it turns out that your game being accessible is really, 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 really important and not just a thing that I harp on constantly on this show.
I don't know that I would define any of the quality of life. They are very minute, and they are mostly for higher end traders.
Right. But they're all things that I think were probably very low hanging fruit that they could easily wrap into an existing release to make it look like they were being more friendly.
I think that's a little bit of an overread. I think TFT drama caused a lot of this.
Same.
TFT drama caused Ashling being quote unquote itemized, but really changing the functionality of how multiple items work as a result.
Yeah, like there is a big crafting overhaul, but it's kind of impenetrable if you don't already have your PhD in Path of Exile.
But also what I mean is like, there's a bunch of little low-hanging fruit things that they did. Like, it has always driven me insane whenever I'm re-rolling something with harvest currency that I have to keep mousing over the item to see what the hell I got instead of just rolling multiple times.
What
and
do
now,
you mean by what's harvest currency?
So the
juice.
So when you do Reforge Chaos, Reforge Fire, Reforge whatever in the harvest bench, you used to have to click the thing and then mouse over the thing that you're rolling to see, did I hit what I'm looking for? Now you just click the roll and it's always going to show you the stats of the item that's currently in the crafting bench. And that's a minor thing that I don't think that they would have done in any other cycle. I mean, that's been something people have been complaining about for years. Well,
I
2 years.
do not know.
Since they changed the way harvest worked.
This feels incredibly minor to me.
It is. It is incredibly minor, but also, like, it doesn't feel like the sort of thing that GGG would have normally fixed because they're kind of unapologetic about inconveniences in their game.
Yeah, I feel like your angle, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, is that they are so devoted to griefing their player base that it's surprising that they thought about it at all.
Literally, yes. That is precisely it.
Yeah.
They do not care about your pain and suffering.
I have to say, I feel like I am currently on a nice long streak of getting my heart broken at the forge. But like I like that even if I'm getting my heart broken at the forge, ultimately I'm coming away with a legendary that is not bricked.
Right. Yes. It is not unfunctional.
It's not non-functional. It's just not what I wanted.
It might suck, but it's still the original thing plus a stat.
It is still better than just a raw unique. So like I didn't get the stats to make it perfect, but like I know that maybe next time I roll and I get that. And it's not like I am nervous about just absolutely bricking an item. The only cost is the opportunity cost of like I just spent a very valuable resource in probably an LP2 or LP3 legendary. But like the unique is still there. So this game, Last Epoch, is so much better at showing me an item that I cannot use on my character and asking me the question, but how could you use it? Yeah, this isn't what you wanted, but who could use it? Who might want it?
Yeah, like you look at an item like, I wonder what build would want this. Because I know there's a build that will.
Yeah. Like I was squinting at the Weaver's Will. Weaver's Will is great for this, by the way. Because you're just getting random
I love Weaver's
affixes.
Will items.
You're just getting random affixes, and at the end of it, you're like, okay, so this is what the Weaver gave me. What can I do with this?
Or like me, I've been purposefully running prophecies to get relic drops, which a lot of times give you Weaver's Will relics so that I can keep leveling them to see if I get something cool on it.
Have you gotten a lot of Melverns?
Which ones are those?
It's the one that gives you a crossbowman.
No.
It's not a Weaver's Will item. It's very good for Grace and I's ballista build.
Part of the problem there is a bit of an affinity system.
Oh, there is, isn't there?
Putting a thumb on the scale, and there's a lot of uniques that I don't see very often when I'm on a Sentinel, but I do on other classes.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that I think we have all talked about, how like, oh, I'm specializing in this one class. I think a lot of that is because you're seeing so much gear for that class and it's evoking new ideas for other builds in same class.
I have 3 Sentinels.
I have 3 rogues.
I have 5 mages.
I have 3 primalists and 2 mages.
That it seems like that system it's interesting. It is kind of acting to stick you into a single class.
It's a little too powerful. Like I would like its bias to be a little bit lower.
I would not mind opting into its bias being lower.
Yes, that.
The thing that I really want is I really want the ability, or I would love for them to change the nodes on the monolith that reward you a specific gear slot that is either unique or set to only be unique. Because you know what I never want to see again? I never want to see another set item.
They should make sets better. Or they should give set items legendary potential.
Okay, the reason why I say that is I now have this Circle of Fortune faction that every time any set item drops, the entire set drops.
Mm-hmm.
I am drowning in set items.
I thought that was a chance.
No, it's every time. It's 100%.
It's not a chance.
That's silly.
Looking at that before launch going, that sounds like crap.
It's not good. It's not good at all.
However, their most recent dev stream did say they plan to buff sets, and it wasn't just by adding LP to them.
I mean, to be fair, I'm almost at 5 million gold because I'm selling every set item that I get.
You should run Lightless Arbor.
Lightless Arbor is a trap. I mean, I gambled away 1 million gold on Lightless Arbor and walked away with 3 usable items.
Yeah, I
walk out of maps with like way more usable items than that. Dungeons right now feel like they do not keep up with what you can get out of Monolith.
I would agree, other than the unique items from the bosses.
Right. Like, if you need a specific drop from a specific boss, then you got to go there for that.
If you want to set yourself on fire, Cremorius is your guy. I also think I find dungeons harder than monoliths, significantly.
They're more fiddly.
I find a T4 dungeon is much, much harder than a 160 corruption monolith.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, all day long.
I don't know what to make of that, but I don't find it as rewarding as a 160 monolith. So, yeah.
No. And, I mean, especially not probably by the time you get to 300-ish corruption, you're at the same difficulty level, but, your rewards are so much higher out of a monolith that I don't think it's ever going to balance out. You're going to dungeons because for whatever reason you like running the dungeons, or you need specific items that only come out of dungeons.
Yeah.
And as a result, I just have a full key tab, and I'm about to have to create another key tab if I care to save any more keys. I'm probably not going to save any more keys. I'm just going to sell them.
I'm in a very similar situation where I've got just a full tab of keys.
I occasionally run arenas. I kind of enjoy arenas.
It's definitely important to have a whole bunch of Temporal Sanctum keys, because otherwise how are you going to get to Act 9?
I tried to do the dungeon skip on my most recent Paladin, and the first one is great, but the second one is real hard at level 26.
Okay, so
they do not mess with you there.
So the way you do this is where Rax's guide was very helpful for me, is you play the campaign very normally, do all of the side quests up until the Oracle's Abode, get the Sapphire Tablet side quest in Oracle's Abode, which takes you to the front gate of Temporal Sanctum.
Right, and just run that.
Don't run that. Then you do that quest, and then you go to the monolith, and then you're probably about level 35, and you run the level 58 monolith, and by the time you're out of that, you're probably about level 55. Then you run Temporal Sanctum. Go to Act 9, do all of the side quests there. And if you do all of the side quests in Act 9, you have exactly enough to get all of your idols and all of your passive points.
Yeah. I watched his guide, and I thought that was a good method. I've just never tried to do the full dungeon skip thing, and I tried it for the first time, and yeah, it is not real feasible to do that second dungeon. The first one is great. That's almost free. I will probably do that from that point on every character. But
I am definitely going to use the just go to the Oracle. It's not that long to get there. And I managed to get my Beastmaster through the full campaign within probably 4 to 6 hours of play.
I mean, to be fair though, I actually enjoy the campaign. So I don't mind playing through the whole thing. I find it really quick at this point.
I don't mind it. I'm going to be excited once they add more story to it. But at this point, I want to see builds come online. Like I'm here to see things happen, to test theories and to prove them out. The Blood Wolves are going great, and I'm excited for them to become the Blood Squirrels.
Squirrels, I will warn you, are real noisy.
Okay, with the Blood Wolves, I can already get to about 150 bleed stacks on a boss. So I think with the squirrels, I should be able to push 250.
Probably.
At that point, the difficulty is the psychic damage.
Because you have 10 little things with bloody paws on your screen that are all chittering nonstop.
Yes.
I happen to like it, but if that would annoy you, then squirrels are maybe not your play. Anyway. But yeah, like I feel like Last Epoch's having more of an impact on the genre than I expected it to.
I think that Last Epoch is having an effect on the genre the way Stellaris did, in the sense that, like, hey, here's a game that you can actually get into in this genre. For a long time in there, Stellaris was like, oh, hey, do you want to understand this genre that maybe you were never into? Here's a way to get into it. And like Last Epoch is definitely that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and it's also really good at calling out, like, if you take this, it's going to make this other thing that you might have chosen be useless, like especially in the talent trees.
I really like that they call out every single time they say more, they also say multiplicative with other effects.
Yes.
That's so good. I wish they said, I wish increase somehow was better at saying, like, additive with other increased effects. But that's definitely one of those things where it's like, it's important to be able to explain to people that, like, there's a difference between more and increased, and that sounds like complete nonsense to somebody who's never played one of these games. Those are synonyms.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, if you have to explain that more and increased are different, you cannot just have more and increased. And like, yeah, it means that there are some people who are going to have to look up what additive versus multiplicative means, because that's not just intuitive. Like, I mean, yes, we do live in a society where that should be like fully covered under your standard high school education, but like, it's not.
I kind of wish they showed the damage calculations.
Yeah,
that's the thing that's the thing that I'm starting to get a little annoyed with. Is there's a lot of
on the dev stream.
There's a lot of stuff that's not accurately represented in game, and there's some of the stuff that you only can really see if you dump your profile in the tools app, which is the POB problem. But you can absolutely get through the game without ever caring about these things.
They are trying to fix it. They at least acknowledge it's a problem.
Well, like, okay, I started running Holy Aura just because it is this Swiss Army knife of buffs. Like, I can get a lot of fire buffs through that, and that's why the switch to Paladin is better than Forge Guard. But there's no place in game that allows me to mouse over something and shows me what the cumulative effect of Holy Aura is.
Yeah, there are some intense dependency chains.
Yeah, like, I would love if they could get to the point where if I mouse over a talent point, it tells me what this is going to do to my abilities. Like, that's nonsense, but also it would be great.
I would settle for a more complete character pane. And like, the character pane is already like horrifically information dense, but even so.
As it turns out, these games are complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the character pane is only showing you things that are directly giving you those stats, not other effects that you will always have on you that are giving you those effects or those stats.
I really do like the idea, and like, I realize this is probably the best way to do it with the tools they have, but when PoE2 has pause enabled, you'll be able to like pause on a frame and then go into the character pane and see what's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of buff icons that I get occasionally that I can't mouse over fast enough to even know what they were. So, like, I would love to know what some of those things are. And a lot of times it takes just trial and error of me trying to figure out what that icon meant that popped up. Anyway, any final thoughts about anything we talked about tonight?
Sounds like that's it.
Oh, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.
See you.